All right, welcome back, Beyonders. We've got a special episode for you today, Dan. This is twice in 1 month
Yep.
that that you're joining us, and actually, it is going to be uh, twice in like 2 weeks because we're going to be meeting next week to do a
Yeah.
podcast. So the special occasion, though, of course, is the Nova Open with our big Warcry GT that we are having, and we wanted to use a special occasion to do a list review and breakdown of some of the statistics that we're seeing heading into it. Now, as I told you before the show started, we had 32 slots available, and I had 4 people who have definitely dropped. So we're down to 28 right now. And I think that there might be 1 or 2 more that may end up dropping, which is, you usually get a couple day ofs that just don't show or whatever. But the good news is that we have 26 solid people coming. Like they've all sent their list. They've all emailed me saying like we're super excited to come. This is going to be a really fun event. So I've been in touch with pretty much everybody in there one way or another. So minimum we're looking 26, which isn't a
Yeah.
bad number, you
Those
know.
are really good numbers.
Yeah. So we're excited about it. But what we decided to do, because the lists were due on Sunday and we have almost all of them, we decided that we would do a Nova Open 2023 Warcry GT breakdown and list review. And let's get into it. So I shared
Mhm.
this presentation with you before. Let me. Oh, here we go. Okay, so here's the Nova Open meta, right, that we're looking at. So the breakdown of alliances that we have, and again, I didn't get all the data here. Like I've got 25 lists here, so this is pretty close, pretty close. Like I think I'm getting one more destruction list coming in from someone for sure.
Yep.
It might flip to chaos if he can get his models painted, right? So
Classic American meta of
yeah,
all destruction.
right.
Like you'll go to a tournament in certain parts of Europe, especially continental Europe, like Spain or Poland, where you'll have a tournament of 24 players and 12 of them will be on Soulblight Gravelords, or like
Yeah.
15 of 24 will be on Soulblight Gravelords. And of course, in the United States, it's almost entirely destruction at every tournament. There was recently a tournament in Kansas City where um, the only Grand Alliances represented were destruction and chaos. It
That's
was like
hilarious.
14 players, only destruction and chaos, and they didn't plan it that way. They just nobody took anything that was
You
in
just showed
order or
up with
dead.
it.
Yep.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So, what we have in our breakdown of amount, so 6 players are bringing a chaos faction, 7 are
Hmm.
bringing order, 8 are bringing destruction, and 4 are bringing death. And the thing that stands out to me there is I expected more death. To be honest with you, I expected less order and more death.
Really?
Hmm. Yeah,
Order
for
usually has
the
a lot of
Soulblight
people.
Gravelords. Yeah,
Yeah, but nobody in the US likes SPG. Nobody in the I mean, obviously one person is in
yeah,
SPG this time, but for the most part, nobody in the US really plays Soulblade. Which
yeah.
is really surprising because like, you know, all of even in England, a lot of people play Soulblade.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's kind of odd how we keep just not seeing a lot of Soulblade in US events.
It's surprising to me because they're such a versatile warband too. I mean, you've
Yeah.
got everything you need in there. You've got heavy hitters, you've got fast, you got fly, you've got like,
Mhm.
I mean, you've got a lot of stuff in there, and it just surprises me. I mean, unless you're rocking the AOS army though, like maybe you just don't have all the models that you want, and
And
so
And we'll see later when we get to the lists. I think a lot of people, even a lot of the more competitive minded lists that are here, a lot of people tried to kind of be the cool kid
mhm,
with the list that they took, which there's nothing wrong with that. You know, I do that sometimes too. But it means that, there's no Nurgle demons, there's no
mhm.
Soulblight Gravelords, because those are just like they've lost their coolness cachet in some way. Like the really strong Nurgle lists, the really strong Soulblight lists have they've lost that kind of cool factor. Um, and we'll see even when we get to the KO lists, KO are pretty proven. They've won tons of tournaments, but like the ones that are at this tournament are kind of doing a little bit of extra spice somewhere. Like they're not maybe the most standard KO lists, which is um, not a bad thing. It's cool. I like seeing
Right.
people kind of get into it and do weird stuff.
Yeah, so I'm gonna run through the faction breakdown here really fast. Like I don't want to spend too much time on it because we're gonna get into like all the lists. But
Yep.
in Chaos, you have two Horns of Heshut armies. You have one Beast of Chaos, one Nurgle Maggotkin Rotbringers. You have one Untamed Beast and one Skaven. Does and I'll just ask like one question: does anything stand out to you in that breakdown?
Nothing so far.
Yeah, yeah, I'm not surprised by the two Horns of Hashut. Like, I think they're really strong, especially if you can bring in an ally or two or something. They're really, really good.
And they're a strong faction that no one's bored with yet, because
Hmm.
people haven't really been playing with them because, it took folks a while and like aesthetically, it took people, I think, a while to warm up with them or like warm up to them. And so I
Yeah,
think that's why, people aren't tired of Horns of a Shit yet.
absolutely. Sentinels of Order. We have the Caradron Overlords with two factions, Seraphon with two factions, Daughters of Cain 1, Fire Slayers 1, SC Thunderstrike 1. Um, So I just want to say one thing. I don't want to take credit for the Fire Slayers being here with our episode last time, Dan. But I mean,
Yeah.
I kind of feel like we have to,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
of course. I can't wait to talk about that list with you.
Yeah. The other thing too is I was giving um uh I'm gonna say his name wrong. Aiton
Yeah, A10.
um
Hmm.
Aiton.
Or
Yeah.
I10.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry. I hope I got that name right.
I even
I
feel
probably
really
did.
bad because I've heard him pronounce his name 25 times, and I can't believe I just screwed it up. Anyway,
I
I'm
know,
sorry.
I know. Sorry. Well, he's got the off meta musings channel, and I was giving him a hard time that Seraphon ended up winning like most popular, and I'm like, nobody plays Seraphon, like
People,
nobody plays
lots
it.
of people play Seraphon, man.
I
They're
know, but
really popular.
well, here we have two people who play
Hmm.
Seraphon that are in the tournament. So I guess I'm eating a little bit of crow at my own tournament here. So, um, all right. So Harbingers of Destruction, we've got three Bone Splitters lists. There's an
You
asterisk there, and I'll
monster.
tell you in a minute. Three Bone Splitters lists, two Gloomspite Gits, two Cruel Boys, one Ogre Ma tribes. Um, so I kind of feel like we got to take credit for Bone Splitters too, maybe a little bit. I don't know.
No,
We,
you monster. You are going to cause so many people to go 1-4 in this tournament because you told everyone that bone splitters are good.
Oh, they are good. They're great. I love Bone Splitters. I love them. So, the I will say this though, that has an asterisk because I had a friend who was coming, and he was going to borrow my Bone Splitters army because I think that
Okay.
first off, that Bone Splitters army is like super easy for like a new player. You only need to use one ability, your charge ability, and if you get a
Yep.
quad, rampage, right? Like so, those two are the only ones you need to think about. Everything else is just point and shoot.
Yep.
And so he was going to come, but it sounds like he found somebody who plays Warcry who's going to take his place because he's going to go play Legion, Star Wars
Okay.
Legion at Nova Open. So there's probably not three. There's really actually two. So
Oh, okay.
yeah. So, but we'll talk about that in the list. Okay, and the Bringers of Death. We have the Askergan True Blades with one, Flesh Eater Courts
Mhm.
with one, Royal Beast Flayers with one, and Soulblight Grave Lords with one. So again, I feel
Yep.
like Death is a little underrepresented, but you know, there's a lot of other cool factions out there right now, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah. All right. That's sort of the breakdown. Any questions or comments about that before we move on?
No, no, I'm excited to get into them.
Yeah. All right. So here's the big thing that stood out to me. No monsters. Like nobody
Hmm.
decided to bring a monster. Like I'm honestly surprised that we didn't see a Chimera in here.
Yeah, and I'm kind of sad and disappointed about that. I mean, I get it. Like, again, I'm gonna keep saying this a bunch of times. People can drink when they hear me say it, but people wanted to be like innovative with their lists, and I think that that's
Yeah.
great. So no one wanted to do like the Chimera in a Nurgle list, but I was hoping someone would try the Chimera maybe in a different faction
Hmm.
and try that out, but no one did, and that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
Other monsters I'm finding have a little bit of play uh, in tournaments that have divine blessings.
Mm,
But I don't think that you had them for this tournament
we
because
didn't.
they weren't out when you had released the pack. So it would have been kind of
Right.
crazy for you to try to like re-edit the pack for that. But for future other tournaments, people should take a look at all of the monsters, if you give them +1 toughness with the divine blessing, they all took that 100 points nerf, which made some of them kind of really hard to play.
Hmm.
Now, once they have 5 toughness with not that many extra points, now it's really hard to bracket them. They're actually a really different beast to try to take down. So
Interesting.
monsters, I think, are back in competitive play now with divine blessings, but um, it'll be interesting to see if people try that going forward or not. Because I know a lot of people just don't like monsters, so that can be part of it
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, I think I know when we did our tournament in like November, right? Our local kind of Northern Virginia tournament. Some
Yeah.
people brought monsters, but I felt like some of them just really felt like monster fatigue a little
Yeah.
bit. Like they're
Hmm.
just feeling like it's okay, and there was enough of like there was enough things out there on the table, like the Caradron Overlords, that killed the monsters. And I think people were like, "Ooh, that's really vulnerable," and we're likely to see a KO list out there in a tournament.
Yep.
So I think that kind of contributed. But again, I was genuinely surprised to see that there was no monsters. So kind of interesting. All right, let's talk about chaos lists here. All right, so we have a couple of our players. Some of them we have seen several times. Some of them we have seen one time, with Nova Open and stuff like that. But Javi Martinez, he's a local DC area player. In fact, I think he lives in Washington DC. He's bringing Horns of Hashut. He
Hmm.
has in his dagger a Demolisher with Flame Hurler, two Shatterers, which are the chaff models for Horns of Hashut, a Raptorix in his dagger. In his hammer, he has a Ruinator Alpha with Flail, Demolisher with Flame Hurler, so two, and another Shatterer. And then in his shield, he has a Demolisher with Flame Hurler, two more Shatterers, and another Raptor. So his dagger and shield are mirrors of each other, but he's rocking a triple Flame Hurler list here, which it's kind of interesting. What do you think of this?
So two really different Horns of Hashut lists here. I
Yeah.
just want to talk about the other one too. So
Yeah, let's do
Ogre
it.
Myrmidon and two Shatterers in the dagger,
Hmm.
Ruinator Alpha, the leader, and two Shatterers in the hammer. And then the shield has a True Blood, a Demolisher with Flame Hurler, and a Shatterer. So Javi's list, you know, triple Flame Hurler is pretty wild. Um, I think a lot of folks, when they play against Horns of Hashut, they have this awful experience where just the Flame Hurler on its own just blows them off the board.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people on the internet that I've seen are like really interested in going as heavy into the flame hurler as you can. And so Javi's made this really interesting sacrifice where he doesn't have a single heavy hitter in the whole list, right?
Right.
And so he's getting all these numbers, 11 fighters, and he's just hoping that the three flame hurlers can be all of the damage. I'm interested to see where that'll take him, right? I think in some matchups that'll be great, but in others less so maybe. Like the the flame hurlers do most of their damage from their triple, right?
Hmm.
And sometimes you can manipulate your wild dice to get two triples in a round, in which case having three flame hurlers is like totally busted, right?
Right.
But when you don't have three triples, the flame hurler on its own, just shooting it's okay. It's
Yeah.
not a liability by any means, but it's not like the devastating, scary force that it is when it's got its ability up. So I think it'll be interesting because no matter what, even if you kill two flame hurlers, Javi's still got another flame hurler, right?
Right.
So that's going to be annoying. The question is that enough damage in that list? Just one flame hurler triple, and that's really it. I think
Yeah.
that's going to be a really interesting question that's going to get answered over the course of the game because The other thing that Javi's got is, a bunch of Shatterers, and those Raptorixes are pretty fast. I mean, it's only
Mm.
move 5, but for, the purposes of the tournament, it's going to be pretty fast. Uh, and so, he might get away with it, just like flood the board on people and
Yeah.
just, we'll see. We'll see if just one Flame Hurler ability is enough in terms of damage.
Yeah, so I know that Javi has play tested this
Hmm.
multiple ways in and out. Like he's done it a lot on Tabletop Simulator. He's done it a lot
Okay.
locally. So what's scary about this list is that Javi knows what he's doing with it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not like he's just being like, "Oh, well, triple the flavor, triple the fun." You know what I mean? And we'll see
Right.
how it works. Like he really does know what he's doing with it, and so that I would be a little worried if I had to sit across the table from him with the triple flame hurler. So that being said, personally, I think 3 is a bit much, especially since you don't have like a body that can kind of be a tank for you a little bit. Like you've got a lot of
Hmm.
really like low wound models here. I think the Raptorix even comes in around 10, maybe 8 to 10.
Yeah.
Um, it's not
I think it's
too,
about
it's not,
12 actually. I think
oh, maybe it's
Raptorixes
12.
have a
Okay.
little bit of beef to them,
Yeah.
um yeah,
Yeah.
you could have convinced me to take the third Flame Hurler and one of the Raptorixes and combine them to get, maybe something. I would have maybe like looked at the menu in Chaos for what's
Yeah.
around for 210, but um I do think Javi's going to do really well. Obviously, horns are really good, and I think
Yeah.
uh a tournament with 3 objective missions, I think he's going to be, big advantaged in all 3 of those. And then it's going to be about, what can he do in that treasure mission with no like really signature treasure carriers in the list.
Right.
Is he going to be able to get so much sort of reach out of those flame hurlers that it doesn't matter? I think that's going to be really interesting.
Yeah. Now, looking at JJ's Horn of Hashut, right? He is taking the route that I probably would have gone with if I were building a list, which is taking advantage of the cheap chaff in the Shatterers, right? He has 5 in his list and
Hmm.
adding like an Ogreroid Myrmidon and a
Yeah.
True Blood in there. So he's got some major threats in each of his groups. I mean, the Ruinator Alpha is pretty good. I wouldn't say that it's like a beefy threat like an Ogreroid Myrmidon. You do have to take a you do have to take a leader, right? So, I mean,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
that's your leader. So I don't know, like maybe putting the Flame Hurler with the Ruinator Alpha instead of the True Blood. I don't know. I mean, that's a kind of a stylistic choice, I think, a little bit, but
So the thing
something
that
to think about.
I liked about the way he set up with the flame hurler and the true blood is the lists that are really good at killing flame hurlers are generally pretty bad against true bloods
Oh, interesting.
because
Okay.
it's got that guaranteed net, right? So
Mm,
imagine trying to like we're going to see a bunch of Brugit lists later on, right?
yeah.
Imagine trying to set up a Brugit combo against a True Blood. You simply cannot do it, right?
Right.
It's if the if the player piloting the True Blood is really savvy and really like careful with their positioning, you simply cannot do a Brugit combo when a True Blood is on the table. And so that's really good at protecting the Flame Hurler. You know
Mm,
what I mean?
yep.
And the lists that are immune to True Bloods are really bad against flame hurlers,
Mm,
like something like a wide Soulblight Gravelords list, right? Those are
yeah.
really bad against flame hurlers, and they're not good at killing flame hurlers. The only thing I do think JJ is going to get kind of maximum punished if he plays against Feradrin Overlords,
Mm,
who are really good at sniping a flame hurler from across the board,
yeah.
and aren't necessarily super vulnerable to True Bloods. But I think he's got play against pretty much everything else. Now, there are 2 KO lists in the tournament, so he's
Right.
got to dodge those if he's gonna win, and he's got to be really savvy with his True Blood. But I think he's really got a shot. And one thing that he's kind of got here that you'll see a few players are doing is his hammer is really weak.
Mm,
And that's a really cool read of the tournament packet
mm-hmm.
because a number of people, I think, noticed that the hammer is used a little bit less over the course of the missions in this tournament, which is really cool because then it's like a test of, are you willing to skimp on the
Right.
hammer? How much are you willing to
Yep.
gamble there? Which is cool. So he's skimping a little bit on the hammer, and that should be interesting to see how it works.
And this is one of the things that I actually really like putting out the tournament pack well beforehand so people can
Yeah,
play test it, they can try it out, right? I want them to come with their best game. And part of the gamesmanship is looking at those little details, right? Which is like,
totally.
oh, there's at 3 out of the 5 missions here, the hammer's coming on in round 2 or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So do I
Hmm.
put a weaker list in there? Do I put my faster guys in there so they can get engaged more quickly?
Hmm.
Like things like that. So I do think that he read the mission pack well. So kudos to you, JJ. Good job for reading that. And paying attention. So looking at our next list, it's John Brown. He played in the tournament last year. I'm forgetting what he brought, but he did play with us. His list name is Stanky Williams and Company. He is
Nice.
the Maggotkin of Nurgle Rotbringers. So in his dagger, he has Putrid Blight King Blight Lord, Putrid Blight King Icon Bearer. In his hammer, he has a Lord of Plagues, Putrid Blight King with Sonorous Toxin, and a Chaos Spawn. And in his shield, he has a Lord of Blights and a Putrid Blight King with Blighted Weapon. So 7 models all total here. But these guys are
Mhm.
kind of beefy. Like they're beefy models in the Blight Kings.
Yeah. Um, One of the tough things about doing list reviews is like when you disagree with someone's choices, it's like you don't want to say they're wrong because there might be something that they thought about that like I'm missing or I'm not thinking of. But like I'm noticing John Brown really heavily invested in his hammer. I
Mhm.
like having a Chaos Spawn and a Lord of Plagues in the same deployment group. Um, I'm curious what the Lord of Blights is doing, or if it's just like, I mean, you never know when you're just looking at a list. Like,
Yeah.
the Lord of Blights is incredibly well painted because I know a lot of pro painters like to bring Nurgle
Yeah.
Rotbringers because it's like a really good warband to try to win best painted with. Or, um, does he have an idea, like looking at a couple of missions that I didn't pick up on? I don't know, but uh, like Nurgle Rotbringers, you get a lot of beef for the amount that you pay, and so
Yeah.
it can be really tough to get them off the table. But I'm not sure if scoring points is going to be the easiest with this setup. So I'll be interested to see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean they're all standard 3 movement, right?
Hmm.
But they all pretty much have a minimum of 25 wounds, right?
Yeah,
Which is
yeah,
amazing. And that the Sonorous Toxin model, it does give +1 to movement for all models within
yeah.
6 inches, I think, or something like that. Which
It does 7 inches. Yep, it
yeah.
does.
Oh yeah, it's the Nurgle 7, right? Of
Yeah,
course.
yeah,
So um yeah, and the thing is it's like a lot of times I kind of scoff at some of those abilities, but I do think that with the Maggotkin, that is an important ability. Because if you can, if in a 14-inch bubble, if you can give
interesting.
your guys an extra movement, like 1 inch movement, that could make a difference. So
Yeah.
um, we'll see how it does. I'm curious because I've actually never played against Rotbringers, and maybe I played against them once, but it was a very soupy list. Like they
Hmm.
they had allied in like a Lord of Plagues, or not the Lord of Plagues. The
Yeah.
what's the one that's on the fly? The Putrid Blight King Blight. No, there's one. Oh, it's the demon guy that's on the fly, right?
I've
So
played against them a few times. What I will say is they're almost impossible for meme lists to beat. So when people
mhm,
go like, "Oh, I'm gonna go like 3 Korgoraths," or "I'm gonna go like, something really crazy, like 2 Varanguard," something like
yeah,
that, you're not gonna win against Rotbringers because
right,
you can't remove any of their pieces. And so if you have fewer models than them, they just score more points than you and never die.
yeah,
But the opposite can be true, where if you outnumber them, you score more points than them, and they never kill you because
right.
only the Lord of Plagues here can really, like, really put out any damage. But the Lord of Plagues did just get a buff with the new Rampage change, so maybe
Yeah,
it'll work out.
yeah, definitely. Okay, let's see. So we have three more players here. Richie Witch. That's kind of his nickname. He's bringing a Beast of Chaos. He's got 3 Ungor with short spear and half shield in his dagger. He has a Doom Bowl in his hammer with 2 Ungor short spear and half shield. And then in his shield, he has a Great Brace Shaman with a Bulgor with Great Axe and an Ungor with short spear and half shield. So he's really, again, I mean, he's got 12 or 9 models here. A lot of them are the kind of cheap chaff. He's definitely got some oomph power in that Doom Bowl and the Bulgor as well. And I do like the Grey Bray Shaman's kind of Mortal Kombat Scorpion move,
Hmm.
which is get over here, right?
Hmm.
And grabbing somebody and bringing them to him. So what's nice about that is if you pair that with the Great Bray Shaman with the Bulgor and Great Axe, you could pull somebody into the Bulgor and then have them hack twice, right?
Yeah.
And that could really make make a bad day for even some beefy fighters out there. So pulling them off
Yeah,
objectives and then killing them, right? So
it's good to have something really big like the Bulgor standing next to the Great Bray Shaman because a lot
mhm.
of the time with the Great Bray Shaman, because it doesn't really fight that well on its own, you can actually lose the game because you did the pull. And I've seen that
Yeah,
happen to people a lot where you pull something into the Great Bray Shaman, the thing you pulled kills the Great Bray Shaman,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
then you've lost this 145-point model. So you have to be really careful with it. And the Bulgor is just makes it way more forgiving to mistakes. I really like the list. I don't know that I like the deployment choices with the list, but
Okay.
um, just having a dagger with nothing really treasure carrier-y, because you've got that mission where it's like the daggers go mano a mano about who fights over the treasure best.
Yep.
I'd be really scared to go to like play that mission with this list, but otherwise, I think the list like in a more like in a vacuum, I love the list, right? I think,
Yeah.
the Ungors and the Doom Bowl and the Great Bray Shaman. I think you've just got so much play, so many options. I think that's cool.
Yeah, I was gonna say too with that Great Bray Shaman pull, I think it works best if you can wait to activate him like near one of the last activations, right?
Hmm.
If you can, like, of course, like every plan survives, survives until first contact or whatever. But
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
can wait to pull something that has already activated into that realm, then you're doing much much better, right?
yeah,
Because I have seen that too. You're like, haha, I brought you over to me, and you're like, okay, great. Like, I'm gonna whack you now. Like, so I
yeah.
think I saw someone pull an Ogoroid Myrmidon into them. Oops.
Hmm.
you know, oops. Okay,
Yep.
so our next one we have Chris Hyde, the Desert Dogs. So he has the Untamed Beasts. In his dagger, he has the Rock Tusk Prowler, 2 Plains Runners. In his hammer, he has the Heart Eater, the First Fang, and a Plains Runner. And in his shield, he has the Slaughter Priest with Blood Bathed Axe. Man, say that like 5 times fast. And 2 Plains Runners. So a pretty standard Untamed Beast list, with the difference being that they dropped a couple of their mid-tier fighters and added the Slaughter Priest.
Yeah. I like it. I think the Slaughter Priest gives them a little bit of extra oomph, that they wouldn't otherwise have. And having the Slaughter Priest and the First Fang is a really interesting choice because, you've got the like multiple pulls happening in multiple places, and you've got a ton of objective missions in this tournament. So, pulling things off of objectives and having multiple places to do it is kind of cool. Doing the Rock Tusk Prowler with no Beast Speaker is really brave and something that not a lot of people choose to do. And so,
Yeah.
Chris plays Untamed Beasts a lot. It's the only warband that he's brought to a tournament in second edition, and he's been to a ton of tournaments. So,
Hmm.
he definitely knows them well. I think Untamed Beasts are pretty limited as far as what they're capable of, but I do think
Hmm.
Chris can get a lot out of them.
I was just gonna say that I think that because he does know this faction so well, Like he's somebody that, like, if you've got like championship aspirations, you probably don't want to line up against, you don't have to line up against him, because in a favorable situation, he'll know what to do with his faction to maybe
Hmm.
squeak out a win.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, like you will have to beat him. He won't beat himself. I've definitely like when you bring a really competitive tournament to or list to a tournament, a lot of the time, like you get usually one or two wins every tournament from your opponent, just like seeing the tools arrayed against them and kind of panicking.
yeah,
And Chris is playing a really weak warband, but like a weak faction, but that won't be what he does. Like he will not panic just because he's
right.
playing against a competitive list because he has piloted this low tier faction so many times against so many different types of opponents that, you know, it'll it'll sort of be done well each time. I'm
Yeah.
excited to look at this Skaven list, though. It's got the two Storm Fiends, the Warlock
Yep.
Bombardier. What do you think of it?
So this is from Gray Rostrum.
Mhm,
He's got, like you said, in his dagger, a storm fiend with rattling cannons, and a storm vermin with halberd and clan shield. In the hammer, he's got a warlock bombardier, and a storm vermin with halberd and clan shield. And then in the shield, he's got a storm fiend with doomflayer gauntlets, clan rat with rusty spear, and a storm vermin with halberd and clan shield. So he's got 7 models here, and 2 of them are storm fiends, right? Um, and I was a little surprised that there's no Packmaster in here. The Packmaster works with the Storm Fiends too, right? Or is it just
no,
the
it
Racco? Okay,
no, it
then
doesn't,
then
yeah.
um then I'm wrong with that. Sorry, I was under the assumption that worked with Storm Fiends as well as the Rat Ogre, so that's why he
Mhm,
doesn't have them in here. Um,
yep,
but you've got some shooty that you can get out of your Bombardier and your Storm Fiend, and he's got some big hitting ones too, like the Doomflayer gauntlets is no joke with that one
mhm.
as well.
Yeah, that Storm Fiend with Doomflare Gauntlets, can, kill any model in the game, if initiative rolls the right way for Skaven in that situation.
Hmm.
I like having the rattling cannons in the dagger there to be able to shoot things down. That rattling cannon puts out like a very reasonable amount of damage at range. And if
Hmm.
your plan is to beat it by rushing it down, like which is the way you beat most big archers in the game, you're not going
Yeah.
to have a good time because you will be shocked at how hard even the melee or like the ranged storm fiends hit really hard in melee when you close with them. So
Hmm.
like rushing down the rattling cannon storm fiend is not a good recipe. I
Yeah,
do
the
find
the trick with these is that it has a 1 inch melee range, and then a 3 to 10 ranged ability. So you need to stay
mhm,
at 2 inches. If you've got a 2 inch fighter, that's your
yep,
key.
yeah,
you
absolutely.
know.
Yeah, totally. I do think, I like Storm Fiends better than Rat Ogres, but what I will admit Rat Ogres are better at is clearing lots of chaff on objective missions because they can kill a chaff, and then the Packmaster can whip them to kill another chaff sometimes, right? So sometimes one Rat Ogre can kill three things.
Yeah.
The downside to Rat Ogres is they get blown off the field by opposing elite fighters. So like, that Myrmidon we saw in a previous list, that'll just flick a Rat Ogre off the field without even thinking about it, whereas it
Right.
will lose to a Storm Fiend. Um,
Yep.
but Gray's gonna have to clear if Gray sort of gets in that like 3-1 or 2-0 bracket, right, with this list, he's going to have to clear a lot of fighters on a few objective missions to win the tournament, which is going to be really hard, and it'll be interesting to see if he can do it. But man, like any opponent who gets into just a stand-up brawl with him is going to have a bad time.
Yeah, I mean, like I didn't realize that the Storm Fiends were movement 5.
Yeah, yeah, they're
I
quick.
thought they were movement 4, but movement 5 and toughness 5, and they all have 35 wounds, right? Like that's
Mhm.
beefy, for sure. So it's gonna make life hard for a bunch of people. But we'll see. The storm vermins, I think, are kind of an interesting choice. Like, um, they're only 10 more points than a clan rat.
Clan rats are
But
unplayable, storm vermins are excellent in my
yeah,
experience. Yeah, yeah. I
yeah,
think I think Gray had to go with one clan rat because the points didn't fit,
that's
but
probably
storm
true. Yeah.
vermin are the key. I don't know if his leader is very high priority here, but storm vermin have that ability to make it so you can't attack the leader, and that's really, really good.
Mm, yeah.
But they're also just toughness 5, so clearing these Skaven off the battlefield. This list does not fight the way you think Skaven should fight. Like they are extremely tough, extremely hard to kill. Um,
That's
yeah,
a really
should
good
be
point.
interesting.
Because I mean, how many times have we seen, rat ogres with a ton of clan rats and packmasters, right? That's kind of like the tried and true
It's usually
Skaven
with
that you've seen.
it should
Yeah.
be with
Well,
pack
tried and
masters
true.
and storm vermin.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, you usually see the rat ogres, so seeing a different flavor is cool here.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Okay, let's see what we got for our last one here. Oh, no, that's it for our chaos.
All
So,
right.
very interesting. All right, so moving to order. All right, let's talk with our just let's get right to it, Dan, and our Caradron overlords. And we have two very different lists here that I think are kind of interesting. I don't know. I don't know. It's very different, but they're different enough.
No, I think they're different. Yeah.
Yeah. So Casey Van Camp, who has been a long time Corvus Cabal guy, he's brought Corvus Cabal to Nova Open last year, to some of our other tournaments. After some of the recent facts, he's just like, these guys are just unplayable right now. Like, I just can't do
Yeah,
anything
they
with
are.
them.
They are. Yeah.
He tried bringing in like a Fulmoroid Crusher and an Ogreroid Myrmidon, but his chaff just died like to a sneeze across the table. So
Hmm.
he's like, I need to do something a little bit different. And he was really interested in KO. So he went out and he got a new army. And so in his dagger, he has the Arcanaut Admiral, Grunstock Thunderer with Aether Cannon, and two Arcanaut Privateers with pistols. In his hammer, he has an Errant Quester with Grand Hammer. Interesting choice. Sky Warden with Aethermatic Volley Gun and Arcanaut Privateer as well. And then in his shield, he has a Company Captain and three Arcanaut Privateers. So, what do you think of this list, Dan?
It's pretty interesting. I think the Sky Warden is that the rank and file balloon guy? That's pretty interesting.
Um,
So the errant quester is there to kind of um, shoot that Sky Warden across the board, which is going to be interesting. Um, you'll be able to just get in one move, right? So you'll be able to errant quester on a double can make the Sky Warden fly 10 inches. It'll be able to fly onto a terrain piece where it can shoot any point on the battlefield.
mhm.
If I've remembered my volley gun
Yeah,
stats
it's 3
correctly.
to 15, right? 3 to 15, three
Yep.
attacks,
So
strength
that's,
3, 1 3 damage. So it's
yeah.
not.
So the attack is not that scary. So it's
Yeah.
not the highest impact combo to do, but it is a pretty cool trick because, then once the Sky Warden is near-ish to the center of the battlefield, it might just never move again, and it might be able to shoot every single turn twice, which is okay. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think,
I think it
obviously,
could kill. It could probably kill some chaff with
yeah,
like
yeah,
some other
eventually.
T3 stuff, with a double attack, right?
It won't do it in round one, but it'll,
Right.
get the party started, and with all the other Arkanauts that you've got out there, that'll help. The other thing, I think I'm with you that this is not necessarily the like most terrifying combo that KO can do, but it is going to have a lot of play to it.
Hmm.
And, any KO list with a Thunderer with Aether Cannon next to a leader, going to be pretty good, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that Admiral
Absolutely.
plus the Aether Cannon is going to certainly blow some things off of the board. And it's hard to rush down that combo because, again, that Admiral is so much better in combat than you think he should be.
4 attacks, strength 4, 3, 5 damage. Yeah, that's pretty.
Hmm.
That's pretty good for
For
a
only 140,
145.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's
And you
pretty
can
good.
usually
So
put your Arco in the way too, so that they can't necessarily get to the Aether Cannon. So,
yeah,
kind of a lot of cool things you can do with that
yeah,
dagger there.
definitely the screen it. Use some screening with those privateers, right? So
Yeah,
for sure.
absolutely.
Now we compare and contrast that to Michael Glazer, Bugmanson's Folly. Sorry, Casey's list was called Plunderers of Thunder. I
Mm,
like that name. Um,
mhm.
Michael Glazer is Bugmanson's Folly. Again,
Yep.
KO list. So his dagger has a Mizzen Master, Enric Ironhail, an Arcanaut with Skypike, and an Arcanaut Privateer. And hammer, he has 4 Arcanaut Privateers. And then his shield, he has an Endrin Master with Endrin Harness, a Grenderstock Thunderer with Aether Cannon, and an Arcanaut Privateer. Um, so he's got some beef in this list, right? With the Mizzen Master. The Mizzen Masters were like one of my favorites.
It's like the
Um,
most fragile fighter in the game, though, as far as beef
that's,
goes. I mean, it is.
yeah,
It dies to a stiff breeze for a 250-point fighter, but it is good.
yeah,
I mean, it does a lot of damage. It can put that, of course, the legendary, fight for profit buff. It can put it anywhere on the field, which is pretty cool.
yeah,
Um, yeah, no, I do think that this list is going to be very successful. I think both of these. We were kind of critical of that last KO list.
yeah.
I think if it won the tournament, I would not be surprised, right? Because you're still going from a point of 11 fighters. You've got what, 6 Arcanaut Company with pistol. Those are really good.
Hmm.
You've got that Aether Cannon. This list is similar, right? You've got these 6 Arcanaut. Let's talk about Enric Ironhail, right?
Yes.
He's so wild. So, this is a great find from Underworlds, one I wasn't really thinking of,
Yeah.
but 15 range on a 6 attacks, 3 strength, 1/3 damage profile.
Yeah.
Um, that's pretty fun for only 120 points. That's like a really nice find, especially because you know, Ironhail doesn't really need the fight for profit combo, which is great
Hmm.
because that Mizzen Master is gonna be leaving him anyway. It's
Right.
just gonna
Right.
leave
Right.
him
Yeah. Yeah.
behind. And so he doesn't need it, and so that's actually a really great pickup by Michael here, and I think that that's really savvy.
Yeah, I mean, like his damage profile. You compare him to the Sky Warden with Aethermatic Volley Gun. It's almost the
Mhm.
same thing, except he has 6 attacks, right?
Yeah.
Instead of 3.
Now the difference is you can't put
Yeah,
Iron Hail on terrain where he can't be touched and he can shoot anything he wants, right? So that,
exactly.
there
Yeah,
is something
he.
you get for paying 50 points there, but I do
Yeah,
think I agree with you that Iron Hail is like a really cool piece and a really cool find for Michael to have included there.
yeah, I'm really excited to see kind of what happens. So when the Mizzen Master leaves that group, those guys are hoofing it. They're all like movement 3 in that dagger. You know what I mean?
Yes,
So
yes.
that can potentially be kind of tough for them. I mean, good thing that they've got ranged attacks and all
Mhm.
that stuff, but if they need to get to where an objective is, I mean, they may be trading in those attacks for just straight movement, to
Yeah,
get where they need to be.
that can be tough, and that's where, the Errant Quester in the previous list can be pretty good in that it both moves 4 and it can give one of those little dwarves a free move somewhere
Hmm.
along the line. Um, but I think Michael's going with the classic strategy of if you kill the opponent, they won't be able to score more points than you.
Right.
Uh,
The old
which
best defense is a good offense, right? So
Yeah, so sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't, but I think he's got a real shot to make it work more often than it doesn't. So that's cool.
for sure. All right. So the other player that we're going to talk about on this slide here is Amber Gerhart, and it's Morby's Assassins, and
Hmm.
sorry, Mombi's Assassin, and this is a Daughters of Cain list. So in her dagger, she has a Bloodrack Medusa at 275, a Witch Elf with paired Scianza. In her hammer, she has a Melusai Iron Scale and another Witch Elf with paired Scianza. And then in her shield, she has a Bloodstalker and then 2 Sisters of Slaughter with a Crouplash and Buckler. So she's got 7 fighters here.
Yep.
Um, and I don't think we've seen Amber out to any of our tournaments yet. So I'm really interested to see what she's bringing to the table here. I'm going to be honest. I think she's got kind of a tough row to hoe with the Daughters of Cain. Um, and this is one of those that you could do okay with them if you know your list really really well, and maybe catch some people by surprise. But she's got some beef in there with the Bloodwrack Medusa and the Melusa Iron Scale. The Bloodstalker, I think, is, man, if she gets engaged, the problem is she gets engaged, the Bloodstalker is just not going to pull its weight as much. You know.
Bloodstalkers would be incredible at 140 points.
Hmm.
But at 170, that's just so much to pay for one.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about Bloodrack Medusas. They are so cool. They
Yeah.
are going to, you know, they just do everything on the board. They're an incredible fighter. We have seen people win tournaments with Bloodrack Medusas in their
Hmm.
list. Now, they weren't doing it with Daughters of Cain. They were
Right.
using it as an ally because at least in my local meta, we've had a couple people try Daughters of Cain and kind of give up on them pretty quickly because
Hmm.
they just couldn't get Sisters of Slaughter to work. They just couldn't get Witch Elves to work. They have the same problem that Corvus Cabal have, essentially. Uh, so that can be a little tough, but um, sometimes a piece like the Bloodrack Medusa can keep you in a game all by itself. So it'll be cool
Hmm.
to see if Amber can kind of do a lot of tricks with the Bloodrack there, um, to kind of get that going. Like for example, in that treasure mission that you've got in there, right? The Medusa's right there in the dagger. You can, go grab the treasure and net the fighter who would be best at taking the treasure from you. You can
Yeah.
do all of that in the same activation with the Medusa, and it's just like boom, game over, right? And
Right. Yeah.
um,
Absolutely.
so there are some cool things you could do with a Medusa in this tournament. And hopefully Amber's able to sort of get that to work to be pretty powerful. But uh, man, if she's able to get to 3 wins in this tournament, that'll be really exciting because I've yet to see
Absolutely.
anyone manage to get like pure Daughters of Cain to really work.
Yeah. I mean, and like everybody will be super interested if she does well, right? Like
Hmm.
what? Because I think so many people have looked at that, and I think one of the tough things is that like the Witch Elves and the Sisters of Slaughter, man, like I know that they're priced for their movement, but with only 8 wounds, like they need to be like 55 and 65 points. You know what I mean? Like
Warcry
they
is
just,
not a game about movement right now.
yeah,
Um,
right.
you know, you do need to move a little bit, but in general, movement is the least important stat at the
Mm.
moment. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So moving on, we have oops, I made a mistake on my thing. We have two Seraphon lists here. I accidentally listed one as Caradron Overlords, but it's really Seraphon. Um, and so I've got Joel Castano. He's playing Seraphon. He has in his dagger 3 Saurus warriors with Celestine clubs. In his hammer, he has a Saurus Scar veteran on a cold one, and a Saurus warrior with a Celestine club. And then he has a Slann Starmaster and 2 Saurus warriors with Celestine club in his shield. So, he's rocking 8 fighters here, really heavily leaning into the Saurus warriors with Celestine clubs, right? That's he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them
Yep.
there. And with the Slann Master and the Saurus Scar. Now, here's the interesting thing, and I gotta kind of bring this up. So the Saurus Scar veteran on Cold One was before on the oval 60 millimeter base, right?
Mhm.
When they refreshed the line, this came out with a new line. It came out with a new name, but
And it's
it's the same
massive.
model. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's bigger,
It's
and the
so big.
base is
Hmm.
bigger. It's
Yeah.
now on a 90 mil base, right? And
Hmm.
so the question is can I still take this as the Scar veteran?
Yeah.
And because I'm like, well, yes, because it's kind of the same model, but it's just bigger.
I would have ruled yes too,
So
for what it's
yeah,
worth. I know you posted this online and like some people criticized you for it. I would have done the same thing you did. It's
Yeah.
like let the people play their models is how I would
Right.
have gone with
Yeah.
it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And at first I thought that they had like that the base had just adjusted or something like that. Like I didn't understand the question at first, and so I said, no, you should probably proxy it as like an Evo Prime, Evocator Prime on Dracolith because it's like the same base,
I could
right?
work too. Yeah.
Yeah, and so they're like, "Oh, okay, like we can do that." And then I went back after I thought about it some more and really understood what was going on. I said, "I'm going to give you the option. You can run it as a cold one, or you can run it as an Evil Prime. I'm totally good with either one of those." And they said, "We'd really like to run it as the Scar Veteran." And I said, "Okay, that's fine with me. It just now
Mhm.
has a ginormous base, so
So
which
I
may
don't
be good or bad for it. I don't know, so
it's good in some missions, bad in others, which is going to be
right,
pretty cool. I think um depending, you know, Seraphon have just consistently had a decent win rate over the course of a lot of tournaments. I don't
uh-huh.
know if you're doing a best overall, but it sounds like Joel is on all the new Seraphon models.
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
if he's the kind of person who's just like running to the store to get the new models to paint them really nicely, if that Slan Starmaster is on the new pie plate base, and he's got like a new Slan and a new Source Scarvet, this is another one where like you could run away with best painted if this is like, really try-hearted, which is kind of cool. Um, the Scarvet is really not Seraphon just have this really good reaction and a really good ability for their Saurus, and the Star Master has the good ability that they just kind of hit above their weight class. Like
hmm
their profiles don't look very impressive, but their abilities and their reaction are all so high impact that they just sort of do more than what they look like on the, on the box.
yeah.
And so Seraphim tend to overperform. So I would watch out for Joel. I think that this could be a really scary list to play against. The Slant Star Master is 30 points too expensive, but
hmm
sometimes for all that it does, you're willing to overpay by 30 points because, like it can really dominate the board sometimes, and that can be pretty cool.
Yeah, look, the all of his models almost, with the exception of the Slan Starmaster, have the Tearing Bite triple ability, which
Yeah.
is you add the attack value of this ability to the damage points allocated by each hit and critical hit from the next melee attack action. So they hit on 4/4s, but their normal damage is 1/3. But if they really need to put some oomph behind it, like a triple, which isn't terribly hard to get, and you could all of a sudden be adding that to your hits and criticals, right? And really do some damage. Now, his entire army has that, so there's flexibility there, right? To be able to use it wherever you need it. Um, Again, with the exception of the Slan Star Master. So I think it's kind of interesting. I do think that this is like straight out of the new Start Collecting box. And he's like, I got a straight up Seraphon warband here, and let's play it. You know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
like go for it. Let's see how it goes, and I'm excited to see how they do. Because as you said, like they are pretty popular right now, just
Hmm.
especially with the newer release that they just had in the AOS sphere. So like more people are saying like, oh, like I want to play, Seraphon. So
Yeah.
pretty interesting. Um, Now, Larry Cutlip Mason, he's got the Bard Killers list. He is also Seraphon. Ignore that on the screen. It says Caradon Overlords. Clearly, I copied the formatting, but this is a Seraphon list. Interestingly, in his dagger, he has the Venari Lord Regent and the High Sentinel from Lumineth Realm Lords. In his hammer, he has two Saurus with Celestine clubs. And then in his shield, he has a Croxagore, a Pterodon Rider with Javelin, and a Skink Star Priest. So kind of interesting. Very different feel from the last one, in my opinion. What do you think of this sort of, Seraphon Plus that we have?
The Seraphim players I know have just not been able to get the Croxagore to work. So I'm
Mm,
interested to see if Larry's able to get it to work. Maybe that's why the High Sentinel is there, right? Like you can point something out, give +1 attack to whatever the Croxagore is fighting. Maybe that's the idea. I don't know. I'm interested to see how Larry will sort of plan it out. Um, I mean, the High
Yeah, if you
Sentinel,
can, sorry, I was gonna
yeah,
say
it's
if you
super
can
cheap.
give it one extra
Mhm.
attack, that Croxagore is hitting 3 attacks, 5 strength, 3 6 damage. That's the same profile with 2 range. That's the same profile as the big Stabas,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And they can do some damage for sure. You know, so
Yeah, and it means you're not doing Tearing Bite, but from this list, you can see Larry's not interested in Tearing Bite anyway. So it's
mhm,
going to be really interesting, and he may just be doing it, for the legend of the Croxagore. Who knows?
totally.
Or he's got a different plan in mind that's not thinking about the Croxagore at all, and we just are like totally missing a trick that's here. I'm interested to see that, but I certainly, yeah, I'm not sure how it's gonna go, but um, yeah, I'll be interested to see how it ends up.
For sure. Larry last year brought a cities list that had like a gyro bomber or copter, one of those two,
Oh,
and
mm-hmm.
some Lumineth Realm Lords as well in mixed in
Yep.
there. You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
he had some dwarves. Like it was kind of a city soup that he had. So
And he did
it's
really
interesting.
well in the painting category.
Yes, he
Yeah,
did. Yes, he
yeah,
did.
I
So
remember that. Hmm.
yep. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So for another order list, we have Alexander Arthur. He has his Magmic Firehold Warband. This is the Fire Slayers, and since we just did a review of this, I was really interested in this. This list, I believe, has the most models of all of the factions at 11.
Tied. That we've seen
Okay,
two other 11
that's
fighter
right.
lists so
Okay,
far, but
fine,
yeah,
tied.
he's
Yes.
he's tied for most. Hmm.
Yeah. So he in his dagger he has the Hearthguard Berserker with poleaxe, the Auric Hearthguard, 2 Volkite Berserkers. In his hammer he has the Volkite Berserker Karl, 2 Volkite Berserkers, and in his shield he has the Auric Runefather, the Auric Hearthguard, a Hearthguard Berserker, and Volkite Berserker as well. So um, we talked about the Auric Hearthguard being the sleeper model in a tournament list, right? With that kind of automatic net that you have,
Sort of,
you don't
yeah.
have to do it, and you can reach out to like up to like 11 inches or 15 inches or something like that to do it, and you don't have to hit, right? You just have to make your attack, and it'll net them for I think it's half movement. It's not full movement, but it's still a half net. So it's I'm interested. He put 2 of them in there though, so I don't know. I think
Yeah.
2 might be one too many, but I'll be interested because you've got really good control of the board, but you have to have 2 triples to make it happen if you want to use them on the same turn.
I was gonna say this is the hold my beer of the Fire
Uh huh.
Slayers lists, where we in our review said Fire Slayer is really, really good, right? Like I'm surprised more people don't play him. And he goes like, okay, yeah, let's challenge accepted. And then we're
Yeah.
like, now Hearthguard, interesting, but I would never play more than one. He's like, no, I'll show you.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
we're
Right.
like, all right, so here's the leaders that are good, right? And then we name the Doomseeker, and then we
Yeah.
name the
Hearthguard
Hearthguard
Carl
Carls,
and
and
the
we're like,
Berserker Carl. Right. Yeah.
yeah, you were okay on the Berserker Carl. I was
Yeah.
kind of skeptical, and we
Yeah.
were very much like, do not touch the Rune Father. The Rune Father is terrible. And Alexander is just like, hold my beer.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And so I do think Alexander is going to do really well because 11 fighters, all of them are dwarves. Now it's really
Yep.
slow, but 3 objective missions. I think he's going to be in a good situation there. He's going to be able to pull opponents down to his slowness, which is going to be great.
Yep.
But I do think once he gets late in the tournament against other people who are also winning a lot of games, you know, I
Yeah.
think, based on everything we said in our review, I think that that's where the edges are going to be lost a little bit, where it's going
Mm,
to be really hard to win games late in the tournament once he's, say, 2-0 or 3-1, going for 4-1, things like that. I think it's going to be hard at that point, but like most players in this tournament are going to have a really tough time handling all these dwarves in most of the
Yeah.
missions.
The key for Alexander, in my opinion, is lean heavily into that relentless zeal, which gives you your bonus 3 inches on your next movement, right? Um, so that's basically a bonus move for them. So lean heavily into that, and also lean heavily into the duty unto death with the our Hearthguard Berserkers, right? That is basically a rampage on a triple. So if you can do that, that'll get your guys moving enough to make up for some of their slowness, and also, especially with the Hearthguard Berserkers, get into some action and hopefully potentially, double attack or even triple attack, but depending on where you're at. So
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you're telling him to play narrative and pick resourceful as his leader trait, so he can get that extra wild dice. Uh, but maybe Alex knows something that I don't.
I'm excited to see it, just because we've talked about it on the show, right? So,
Yeah.
and I have never seen, as we said before, Fire Slayers in the wild. So
Hmm.
this is one I'm definitely going to be keeping my eye on.
Yeah. And I do think if he keeps those berserkers alive, he'll have some damage out there. So that'll be, I do think he's going to win more games than he loses. I do think it's going to be a really hard out for anybody who faces him.
Yeah, for sure. The last order list that we have is from Andrew Elliott. It's his Thunder Skinks list. Now, I don't know
Hmm.
about you, but I looked at this list and I'm like, what is happening here when I first saw it come in?
Oh,
And then,
really? Interesting. This is a really popular list online.
is it? To be
Yeah.
honest with you, I've never seen this list before. And I was like, what is happening here? And then I looked at it and I'm like, this is amazing. I
Hmm.
actually I was like, I love it because you got your bodies with your skinks and you got your heavy hitters, right? So what you have here is a dagger. You have Kixi Taka and Zepik from the Underworld's Seraphon band, and an Annihilator with Grand Hammer. And then in your hammer, you have an Annihilator with Grand Hammer and Talk, again from the Seraphon Underworlds models. And then in your shield, you have Calathea Zandir. You have Annihilator with Grand Hammer and Otapodal, which is again from the Seraphon Underworlds model. So interestingly, all of his chaff here, all of his models are pretty much Underworlds models with the skinks. And then you have Calathea, who is the Underworld's leader, but you can use her as a leader in your list with Thunderstrike. And then you've got 3 Annihilators with Grand Hammer. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. Have you seen how it's performed out there, or is this just kind of a net
Yeah.
list that people have said
This
like
is a
it's kind
really
of interesting?
popular list for a whole host of reasons. So,
Mm-hmm.
I won a tournament with a somewhat similar Thunderstrike list
Mm,
last spring. It was with Calthea Zandire, but it was only Stormcast, except for one dwarf. And this list kind of takes that and goes, what if we took out a bunch of the hitting power in like just having fewer annihilators, having 3 instead of 5, but we replaced it with extra bodies. So the idea is
yeah.
Kixitaka in instead of the old guard. It doesn't boost their movement by nearly as much, but it allows you to bring extra body. So I think Kixitaka is just strictly worse than an old guard. Um,
Uh-huh.
but what it allows you to do is bring in Zepik and Tok and
Mhm.
Otapodal, who go off of the Warcry 1.0 points algorithm. So Tok and Otapodal do significantly more damage at range than current points allow you to do.
Yeah.
And Zepik, having move 6, costs way less than a move 6 fighter with the number of wounds and the number of attacks that he's got would cost now. Zepik would cost 90 points now.
Yeah.
In the
He's
current.
he's cheaper than a Sister of Slaughter or a witch elf, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So,
And so yeah, he's got more toughness than a witch elf. He's
mhm.
got
More
really
movement.
similar damage output. I think he like almost as much, and he's got more movement and more
Yeah.
toughness. And so uh just a really points efficient fighter. And so the idea here, the reason this is popular is the idea is that it having 8 models allows Stormcast to compete on objective missions. So for an objective-heavy tournament, the idea is Stormcast are generally unplayable in tournaments that are mostly objective missions. And but with 8 models and a bunch of Seraphon helping them out, maybe it'll work. It's a mostly untested list. I think only one person's actually brought it to a tournament, but they did take second. So that was a pretty good performance. And people who play TTS or people who whisper about their testing sessions online, they generally talk about this list as being the real deal. But we have not seen it at a tournament, so we have no idea how it's going to go.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to see it because this is literally the definition of a min max, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Totally.
to be able to get bodies and movement and in hitting power. So
Yep.
very interested to see how it performs as we go along. All right, well, let's get into our beefy ones, our Destro list. So I've got 3 Bone Splitters lists up here.
So you go straight to the
Adam,
not beefy destruction lists.
exactly. So let me talk. So the first one's Adam Hill's Bone Splitters list. Now he's the one that is getting replaced. So this is the list that I created for him, and I just want to talk about it just super briefly because I really like this list. I played it the other day and really liked it. So in the dagger, you have a Savage Big Boss. You have a Savage Auric Moorboy Bone Totem Bearer. You in the hammer you have a Savage Auric Moorboy Boss, a Savage Big Stabba, and then in the shield you have a Savage Big Stabba and 2 Savage Auric Moorboys. So you only have 7 bodies on the field, but they all have movement 4. They all have access to their charge. The Savage Big Boss is 3 attacks, strength 5, 3, 6 damage. So are the 2 Big Stabbas. And the Savage Auric Moorboy boss, he is 4 attacks, strength 4, and 3, 6 damage as well. And then the Bone Totem Bearer and the Moorboys are 4 attacks, strength 4, 2, 4 damage, but the Bone Totem Bearer hits at 3 inches away. And the Savage Big Stabbers are 2 inches away. So what's great about that is that they can use their charge to pretty much get within range and then double attack like all the time. And you talked about how Seraphon, like the Saurus, like sometimes hit above their weight class. I really feel like some of these guys hit above their weight class because they have that bonus move and then double attack. And the opponent usually has to move towards them to then be able to attack them. So it's kind of nice. So I'm just throwing that list out there for anyone who's interested in Bone Splitters because I've played this a little bit and I really really liked it. So that's just straight Bone Splitters, which is different than what I took to Adepticon because I had a Gorgrunta boss and a Brute boss in my list,
Mhm.
and I decided to swap them out with Big Stabbas instead. So, and more boys.
Cool.
So, yeah, kind of interesting. Um, yeah. So
I'm
anyway,
excited about this Thomas Arthur list because
yes,
this list is like about something. You know what I mean? It's
yep,
it's got these 2 Bolt Boy bosses here. They got a tiny buff in a recent FAQ. I think not the last FAQ, but the one before,
hmm
um, that lets them really shred armor, which is
yeah.
really nice.
They get crits
Especially
on 4s, right?
right, right, and they can sort of keep their distance from the really scary fighters in the game. You can sometimes, get that off with both of them in one round
hmm
and just really delete something sometimes pretty big. So that's really cool. I'm really excited to see how this goes. This is one of the few lists where I have literally no idea how I think it'll perform. You know, I've for every other list that we've talked about, I have in my head, about how many wins I think they'll get. This one I have literally no idea how I think it'll perform, and that really excites me.
So what he has in his list, he has a dagger that has a Bolt Boy boss, and two Savage Oryx with Stickas and Bone Shields. In the hammer, a Bolt Boy boss, a Savage Oryx with Stick and Bone Shield, and a More Boy in there as well. And then in his shield, he has a Savage boss with Trumpet and Shield, and two Savage Oryx with Stickas and Bone Shield. So he's got a lot of chaff in here.
Hmm.
And the thing that concerns me just a little bit is that those stickers and bone shields, I mean, they have 3 attacks, strength 3, 1/3 damage, right? And so you're not really going to be putting out a lot of oomph with these guys. You're going to be and even the Savage boss with Champa and Shield, like that he took as his leader there, right? It's still not a ton of output there. And so I it's going to be the Bolt Boys that end up doing the heavy lifting for this list.
Hmm.
Now they have staying power, right? Because their toughness 4, the Stickers and Bone Shields, are toughness 4, but 15 wounds.
Yep.
So I've been in a lot of fights with those guys where they're really hard to get off the table,
Yeah.
especially against other chaff. You know, so
Hmm.
it'll be
And
interesting.
And this is a wonderful masterclass in sticking to the theme. Uh,
Hmm.
those stickers are there because the 2-inch reach combos with the Bolt Boy boss, allowing it to still shoot when they're in combat with something. So, he's really, really clearly thought about this list. I don't know if it's going to do very well or not, but
Yeah.
like real thought went into this list. And so I really love that. I'm just so excited to see how well Thomas does.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Thomas is a faithful listener to the show. And we
Hmm.
met him at Adepticon, and he
Yeah.
ended up coming out to dinner with us afterwards. So, like,
Really
he's the kind of
incredibly
guy. Yeah, go ahead.
he did pretty well at Adepticon. He went
Yeah,
2 1 and
mhm.
1
With
with
Seraphon, I
Seraphon
think.
and
Yep.
incredibly well painted.
Yeah.
Just like a mind-blowing paint job on that Seraphon. Just absolutely incredible. Um,
And
yeah, so that
he
was
is
really cool.
he's one that thinks through his list. So this isn't just
Mhm.
something that was sort of slapped together, right?
Yep.
Like he's thinking through it. So I'm excited about that.
And I would also add that his 2 1 and 1 at Adepticon, his one loss was to the Chimera.
Right.
So that's a more impressive 2 1 and 1 than a normal 2 1 and 1 would be, right? Like he was
Yeah.
undefeated except for against a Chimera.
Right. Absolutely.
Yep.
All right. So the other Bone Splitters player that we have is Wade Schoonover. He has in his dagger a Morboy Bone Totem Bearer, an Orc with Champa and Shield, a Savage Orc with Morboy Boss. In his hammer, he has an Orc with Champa and Shield and an Orc Morboy Boss again. And in his shield, he has a Morboy Bone Totem Bearer, and then he has a Champa Shield and another Morboy Boss. So he has 3 Morboy Bosses, 2 Totem Bearers, 2 Champa and Shield, or 3 Champa and Shields. So not a ton of variety in terms of models. I think he only has like 3 different types of models. Um, but I'm telling you, those Morboy bosses, don't sleep on them. For 175, they actually pack a nice little punch. And the Bone Totem Bearer being able to hit from 3 inches away, there's a lot of models in this game that can hit you back at 2 inches away, but not a
Hmm.
lot that can hit you back at 3 inches away. So being able to be three, outside of two and hit something and then make them come to you only works in favor of the more boy totem bearer as well, right?
Yeah.
So,
I think he's taken this Bone Splitters list with the philosophy of like being able to kill a lot of chaff fighters,
mhm, yeah,
and kill them in any part of the board, which I think is a pretty defensible plan for this tournament pack and for most expected metas. I do think it's going to be tough, like we're gonna see all of these Brugit lists are a coming, right? And it's
yeah,
gonna be, I think, really tough to pilot this Bone Splitters list against all those Brugit lists.
yeah,
But we've also seen a few kind of flood the board lists as well, and I think he's going to be able to sort of clear, if he's able to get the right matchups, he'll be able to sort of clear some chaff models off the board.
for sure. All right, so we've got Peter American Cabbage, right? Knights of the Clammy
Mhm.
Hand, and this is, of course, his Gloomspite Get soup list that he has. In his dagger, he has a Crusher and Prog the Netta. In his hammer, he has an Ardboy Boss, a Brugit, a
Mm.
Stabber with Barbed Net, and in his shield, he has a Bounder Boss, Snurk Sour Tongue, and Brugit. He's been working on this list since last Nova Open when 2.0 came out. And
Yep.
he didn't do as well as he had hoped last year at the Nova Open because he was at the top of his game in 1.0 with Gloomspite Gets, right? Like, I mean, he
Mhm.
was crushing it and he had his list down to the T. And then they changed all the points on him and it messed him up pretty good. And so he's been working on this sucker for a while. And I think that he is getting down to close, like he's getting down to the point where it is um a very well honed list, right? Like
Mhm.
he is maximizing points, he is maximizing, points per damage, points per wound, like all that stuff. He's doing all the math on these things to really just every position in his army or in his warband is like well thought through,
Mhm.
and that's just the way Peter rolls with his warband, very
Yeah.
methodical about it. So anything that stand
Yeah.
out to you with this?
I mean, anything that I could say about Peter would be underselling it.
Yeah,
He's taken this tournament or this he's taken various Gloomspite lists, iterating on them to various tournaments. He's got like an 80 something percent win rate, which is wild given that other Gloomspite Gifts players combined have like a very low 40s win rate, and he single-handedly has brought them to 50%, uh, which is really incredible because he just goes to
yeah,
so many tournaments. Um, yeah, I almost hesitate to really, like, tell people how it works because there's so much play to this, and we're an hour and 15 minutes into the
yeah.
podcast. We could spend the next 45 talking about all of the layers that are going on in this warband. Do not netlist this warband, you will lose every game. Um,
That's
if
so
you
true.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
it won't
it's
work
so
for you.
true.
There's so much going on. I love it, I love the house of cards that this is, and um, it's very hard to play against, right? Finding the right card of his to knock down to bring the whole thing crashing down is really tough. Um, Peter has come in second in more tournaments than most people have even gone to. So
Right, right.
this it'll be cool to see if this is the one to go from second to first in his first major tournament. I think he's got a really good shot at it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we have another Gloomspite Gets list with Craig
Mhm.
Lombardo. This is Grinkgat's Bottle Snatchers.
Yep.
Um, and in his dagger, he has Grib the Wonky Lance, a Boggleye, a Brugit. In his hammer, he has Grinkgat the Great, a Boggleye, Zarbag's Git Squig. And in the shield, he has Meaneye, Snurk Sour Tongue, and Progdenetta. So this is very much an Underworlds mashup. Like he
Yeah.
doesn't even actually have one Gloomspite Gets, like normal Gloomspite Gets model. It's a mashup between two Underworlds bands and but and
Palooza.
Gobblepalooza,
Yeah.
right? So kind of interesting.
Really
How
cool.
I think it's going to be there's going to be pretty heavily relying on abilities for this to work, right? With like the Boggleye and Brugit and the Meaneye and Snurk Sour Tongue and all that stuff. Like you're going to have to really be reaching your bag of tricks with this one, I think.
Yeah, those boggle eyes are good, but one thing that's dangerous about relying completely on netters is they do have that 1 in 3 chance of failure. And
Mhm.
so netters protecting completely fragile units can be really tough. Peter's got that crusher and that Ardboy boss in there for a reason. I do think
Right.
it's really tough because like obviously Craig like went in with a theme, and I
Hmm.
really can't I hope you get a picture of this warband. I don't know if there's a way to build a backup plan in case the nets fail without breaking the theme. I don't
Hmm.
think there would have been unless Craig had maybe brought Malog, but that would have like completely thrown the warband sideways and probably pulled him off
Yeah,
theme.
totally.
Uh,
Right.
so, you know, at a certain point, like 100 years from now, no one's going to remember who won this tournament, but they will remember who had the coolest theme. So,
For
um,
sure.
yeah. So I do think, it's worth it to stay on theme, and I think that this is going to be really cool. And uh, yeah, and it might be really annoying to play against too, right? So he's not just going to be an easy out because of all those boggle eyes. So and of course the Brugate combo. So um, you know, I think it'll be tough for him to beat some of the higher tier warbands that are here. Like I don't know what you do against a flame hurler.
Hmm.
Um, but other than that, I think it's a really cool warband. I think it's got a ton of play to it, and I think it would be a lot of fun to play and a lot of fun to play against. And I do think he's going to win some games because, you know, when those Boggle Eyes and that Brugit, start getting going, I think it's going to be pretty cool.
Absolutely. Now we have Justin Orton here with his double trouble list.
Yep.
In his dagger, he has a Gut Lord, a Brugit, and Shriek, which is the bird from the piratey Underworlds models. In his hammer, he has Luggett and Thwack, Quiv, and Bushwacka from Hrothgorn's Man Trappers. And in the shield, he has Gut Lord, Brugit, and a regular Noblar. Now, I played against this list at Adepticon, and it was a little bit different because he didn't have Shriek. Oh no, he did have Shriek in there. I played against this exact list at Adepticon.
Hmm.
It is rough. Like
Hmm.
it is really hard, just because it's like when you think that you can, with a Gut Lord, when people include a Gut Lord in the list, you're like, okay, I'm just gonna play keep away. I'm gonna, keep away from it. He has two Gut Lords and two Brugits, right? And you're like, oh, okay, how do I keep away from that? Well, it gets even harder when he has Bushwhacker throwing out his little trap, and all of a sudden, like locking off a passageway that you need to get away from those Gut Lords. So you need something to deal with. I mean, you've got to be able to deal with it. Going after the Brugits isn't a bad idea, or but you have to address them. Like
Yep.
it's just gonna be tough, right? So
Yeah, absolutely. The Brugits are a coming, and those Gut Lords are going to be really smashing stuff up. Justin's normally known for bringing something like new and innovative to every tournament. He said that the reason he couldn't do that for this one, if you see Justin at this tournament, give him a hug. He moved house, and the movers smashed most of his AOS stuff. So he couldn't
no,
mix and match a new warband. Luckily, his Warcry warband was in a different box. So this one didn't get smashed up.
oh my
Um,
gosh,
but yeah, so give him a hug because that I just can't imagine that. So,
he's gonna need it.
yeah, he's gonna need it. But like this is another one where, we could you cannot overstate how large of a threat Justin is to win the tournament.
Yeah,
Because, he went third at Adepticon with this exact same list. So everyone who is watching this or listening to this podcast who's going to be at Nova, you should start thinking about maybe theory crafting what you're going to do against this list right now, because I can guarantee you will not win the tournament without either beating Peter or Justin.
yeah.
That is a
I think
fact.
that's fair.
You will not win it
Yeah,
unless you beat one of those two players, and both of their lists are on the board right now. And um, yeah, you know,
yeah. I
look
would
at
I
these
would
two lists
start
and
going
theory
through.
craft.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
would start looking. Okay, if I'm playing on this list, this is how I'm going to handle it, right? Because I played Justin in a Reaper mission with
Yep,
my Bone Splitters against his Crusher, and it's just like, and he did a great job of basically hiding his gets away from me, and basically blocking the only two entrances to this little area with two Gut Lords,
yep.
and it's like I can't do anything here, So
Now, the
anyway,
one piece of advice that I would give people is gut lords can seem really invincible when they are just kind of flying around the board, killing the first thing they touch, right?
hmm
But they don't necessarily live that long when you, like, actually pour stuff into them. Like, I've
right,
seen a Storm Fiend kill a Gut Lord in one strike. Um,
wow,
and so, like, if you onslaught a Storm Fiend and attack twice with it, your chances of killing a Gut Lord are actually pretty high.
yeah,
So, don't like, this happened to me at Adepticon with the Chimera. People would just get afraid of it,
Mhm.
or they would get too overexcited to kill it. Don't act like there's nothing you can do against the Gut Lords, unless there's literally nothing you can do. I mean, don't
Yeah,
bring a warband that has nothing it can do against Gut Lords, right? But, um, you know, don't panic when you see them, I guess is
sure,
the very first piece of advice I would give is don't panic when you see those Gut Lords. They do bleed, but just don't let him get into a like, you either need to completely run away from them or completely invest in killing them. You can't
sure.
really go halfway, unless you've got, like, some real good disruption elements,
Excellent
like
point.
netters, stuff like that.
Yep. All right, so this brings us to our two cruel boys list. Travis Bowling has in his dagger three gut rippers with wicked stickas. In his hammer, kill a boss with boss hack and flail, and two gut rippers with wicked stickas. And then in his shield, he has a brugit, tyrant, and potgrot. So what are your thoughts with this one, Dan?
Um, Obviously, that Brugit Tyrant combo, this is another one where,
Yep.
like, it can blow anything off the board at any time, which is pretty scary, and you've got enough kinda other bodies in there, right? You've got 9 fighters. This is kind of playing in a lot of the same space that Justin is playing in, actually,
Hmm.
as far as, you have these overwhelming damage, um, sources, and then you've just got, you know whereas Justin's got these really cheap chaff units that allow him
Hmm.
to kind of spend a ton on the big combo. Um, Travis has just gone with one source of that combo and then just really durable chaff units. So the idea is he'll just blow your stuff up faster than you'll blow his stuff up, and
Yeah.
that could work. I do think that this list is going to be really hard to beat in a lot of situations.
Yeah, the killer boss is no slouch, right? Like at 190, I
Hmm.
actually like it a lot.
Yep.
Um, and he's hanging out with the wicked stickers, which is good.
Hmm.
Because he can kind of help do that warrior combo with them, right?
Yep.
And so yeah, like I like this list. We'll see how it does. I'm a little concerned about the dagger having just gut rippers in it though. But he
Yes.
only really has two
Same.
major threats here, so one of them
Hmm.
had to, I guess, not have something in it, right? So,
Yeah, but it does seem like he's got a lot of points in that hammer and not a lot of points in the dagger. You look at,
mhm,
say, Justin's list is very well positioned for the missions that you've got, where his hammer is like totally skimped. If you had a mission where your hammer was the most important deployment group, he wouldn't be able to do anything, right?
yeah,
But there is no mission like that, and so he's not going to get punished for it, which is
yeah,
really smart and really savvy by him to kind of do it that way.
right,
Whereas this, I think, Travis might get in a situation where he's like really wishing his killer boss could get in on the action.
hmm hmm yeah. Next, we have an interesting soup list from Robert Visconti,
Hmm.
and I hope I said that name right.
Yep.
Viscomi. It's my dad's house list. The dagger is a kill a boss with rusty flail, a gut ripper with wicked sticka, and bushwhacker. His hammer is an Ardboyd boss. He has Shank in here from the Cruel Boys Underworlds list.
Big
And
deal. Hmm.
what's that?
Big deal. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. And he has Gut Ripper with Wicked Sticka. And then in the shield, he has Hrothgorn Man Trapper as an ally with Quiv and another Gut Ripper with Wicked Sticka. So um, very interesting soup list here. It's an Ogre Cruel Boys combo that's happening here, right?
Mhm.
I think it's really. I mean, the Art Boy boss is not a bad choice. I think at 135, like he's got some beef to him, and he can put out some damage. Like maybe he's not a brute boss, but I mean, it's not terrible for 135. And then the killer boss again, we just talked about that. So he's got three deployment groups that are pretty good. But I think the Hrothgorn Man Trapper is the key to this
Yep.
list here, right? You're trying to set him up to blow models, not chaff, models off of the table,
Right. Mhm.
right? So, yeah,
Yeah, Hrothgorn can kill, when he's getting buffed by Quiv. For people who don't know, Quiv can give Hrothgorn an extra attack. Hrothgorn can also give himself an extra attack with his double. Ogres are really incredible for that reason, where if they kill something, they get a they get to do an extra thing, but that can include do an extra attack action, and it works at range. So this was the big combo in 1.0 was people would take
Mhm.
double Thunder Fist, and Thunder Fists have since been nerfed, but they used to be able to just, blow chaff models off the board and then use their double to get an extra attack to just like you would get six attacks off of your like six attack steps, not you roll way more than six dice off your Thunder Fist. Hrothgorn is using kind of that old points algorithm, so he does more damage than you would think he should. And he's getting buffed by Quiv, and he buffs himself, and that is like a absolutely terrifying combo. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, just I can't wait to see how this does. I think it's going to be really hard to play against. This could be a like dark horse for the tournament for sure.
100%. I think what he has to be careful of is not get his chaff models too engaged. Do you know what I mean? Like for
Yeah, to
Hrothgorn to do
stop
his
his
thing.
Hrothgorn to kill from killing things. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Like so if I were sitting across from this list, I would want to engage the
That
um
gut rip, those gut rippers, because those stick of
yeah,
gut rippers aren't killing anything.
right.
Now they're going to be setting up 2 inches from you so that he can still shoot with the man trapper.
Mhm.
That's really well thought out by him. But if I'm the opponent, I'm like, yeah, rush down those gut rippers, get in combat with them, and then he is going to be ready for that though, because he's got that Ardboy boss, the killer boss with the flail. He's going to be
Right.
trying to use the reaction to get bonus attacks on the Ardboy boss, bonus
Yep.
attacks with the killer boss with flail, right? So there's gonna be, like, a lot of thought back and forth for every single person who plays against him,
Yeah.
um, and, yeah, I really hope he loves those really heady, really difficult games because he's gonna every single game is gonna be really difficult for both players,
Yeah, for
and that might
sure.
work to his advantage. If he's tested this list a bunch, then that's gonna hugely work to his advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we have 4 lists left. They are our death lists. So let's start with Eric Octor. He's playing Askergan True Blades. In his dagger, he has a Tomb Banshee. You don't see those too often, but he opted to bring her as an ally. He has an ascetic with Charnel Mace and an Acolyte Throat Taker. Um, in the hammer, he has another aesthetic with Charnel Mace and another acolyte with Throat Taker. And in his shield, he has the exemplar, an aesthetic with Charnel Mace, and an acolyte with Throat Taker. So
Mhm,
basically, 3 maces, 3 Throat Takers, a Tomb Banshee, and an exemplar, which gives you 8 models. I played against this list, and we ended up playing Reaper, and he won
mhm.
against my Bone Splitters
Yep.
because of the Tomb Banshee. The Tomb Banshee was the MVP of
Mhm.
this because she was able to res the models, and I had won round 2, so he
Yep.
forced a tie. And then I had tied round 4, and then he ended up winning by resing one of his models there, right? So,
Mhm.
um, and of course they couldn't activate in that turn, but that didn't matter. It gave him the points um, in the thing. Now, if I had been playing him in a different mission, I played another Askergan True Blades right after I played him, and my orcs. It was the treasure mission from the Nova Open. We were doing the practice. My orcs
Mhm.
just ate. I mean, they just
Yeah.
cleaned up right with that because you're getting people kind of to that center of treasure, and it just like big stabbas and big bosses just flying at it and stuff like that. And so
Yep.
um, I will say this though, and I told Eric this. What I like about the Askergan True Blades is they don't have a lot of attacks, but all their attacks are quality attacks,
Mhm.
right? So,
Which is important in this counter world. Mhm.
yeah, absolutely, right. And
Yep.
so the interesting thing is, it's like, okay, cool. I've got a spirit host that has 6 attacks, but it does like 1/4 damage. Like that's not quality attacks. That's just I'm fishing for crits there.
Mhm.
These guys have 2 attacks, but they end up doing like 3/6 damage.
Yeah.
or 2/4. I mean, they do some good damage. So um, I think that he's pretty good. Eric is pretty good. He was our Sylvaneth player last year.
Hmm.
Um, that had the really cool painted Sylvaneth models, right?
Yep.
And
And went
so
3-1, and not very
yep,
many people have won any games with Sylvaneth since.
that's right. And he ended up doing very well at our tournament up at Huzzah as well. And I
Yep.
can't remember what he was playing something else. I think he might have been playing a Soul Blight Gravelord list.
Yep.
Or maybe Rotmire Creed. Anyway, he's very good at the game though.
Mhm.
So a very good thinker.
Yeah, I
So I'm
expect him to
excited.
do pretty well. This is another list that I would say don't net deck it because I don't think he'll do very well. But I do think he will do well. You know, the Tomb Banshee, I've seen Singleton Nighthaunt allies do pretty well in a variety of death lists because of their, Nighthaunt are just famously one of the worst war bands in the
Yeah.
game, but just one Nighthaunt hero gives you a lot of utility and a lot of kind of ways to surprise your opponent, and I think that's pretty good.
Yeah.
And of course, exemplars, man, like on a rampage, they can kill anything in the game, right? If they're
Yeah.
getting 3 attacks on something, like literally any model in the game could theoretically die from an exemplar that's rampaging on you. So a lot to fear with exemplars. There's only one here, and they are very killable at 20 wounds, but
Right.
that is something that can kind of steal a game at any time.
He did a very good job too of screening his exemplar, right? Like letting
Hmm.
his throat takers kind of be the bait
Yeah.
for stuff, and then he would bring him in. So, like I said, this guy knows how to play. So if you end up facing off across them, like you're going to need to be on your A game when
Hmm.
you do it.
Hmm.
We have a player here, Matthew Kelly. His army were not dead yet. It's
I
the
love
Flesh
this
Eater
list.
Courts.
Hmm.
His dagger is 2 Crypt Ghouls. Hammer is 2 Crypt Ghouls, and his shield is a Vargulf Courtier, a Crypt Haunter Courtier, and a Crypt Flayer. So
Hmm.
he went super light in his dagger and hammer,
Yep.
and pretty heavy in his shield.
What a
So
baller move. Yeah.
it's a serious baller move, right? Now the good news though is that the Crypt Flare and Courtier, like they can move, right? They each have like I think 10-inch fly.
So can the Haunter. It goes six
Yeah,
inches. Yeah.
right. So people are going to be like, oh, these little Crypt Ghouls. Next thing they know, they got a Vargulf that's like landing on top of them, and
Yep.
using that nasty triple that it has, probably the best triple in the game.
Mhm.
So um, yeah, good
Yeah,
stuff.
this is something where like I think this list is well designed. I really do. I think, it's going to be tough against some of the really broken factions in the game that are sort of here. It's like some of those Brugit combos are going to be tough to
Yeah,
overcome. But in terms of like, we're just going all in on a skew idea that's going to be really hard to play against. I think he'll like Matthew is going to win at least one game this weekend where his opponent just didn't know what to do at all because his
right.
list is so different from normal Warcry
Hmm.
that it will absolutely throw some players for a loop. I would be pretty concerned the first time I played this list against this list. I've never played against someone who is doing what Matthew is doing here.
Yeah.
And so I would be pretty concerned if I saw this list across the table from me, just because it's like, well, anything could happen here. So I think that's
Right.
really cool. And if Matthew has practiced a lot with this, he could do really well. I do think it's a bit of a rock, paper, scissors situation. I think certain
Yeah.
factions would just shrug this off. Um, certain factions would go like, your various flyers are not going to kill my chaff very quickly, so I'm just going to hunt down your ghouls, get them off the board, and then beat you on objectives while you struggle to kill my chaff fast. But
Right.
any faction that relies on like a couple fighters to do something, uh, he's gonna probably have the tools to take that down, which is really cool.
Absolutely. Now, the flip side of this Flesh Eater's coin is the Royal Beast Flayers, right? The specialized new faction. And Kyle Knapp, his war band is called the Flash Mob, which I love. Um, And it's just I've got this idea of like all these like ghouls like just kind of like milling about in the store, and they hear music and they all come out and flash mob
Yeah.
dance, you know. Um,
Yeah, I
but
hope he's, like, specifically gone through the trouble to not clean the flash off of any of his miniatures too. I hope he's, like,
That'd be
painted
hilarious.
them with most of the sprue still on.
Right, right. That'd be awesome. Yeah. So his dagger is the Royal Flaymaster, who's the leader. You've got the Ghoul Gore Squire, and then you have two Ghoul trackers. His hammer, he
Mhm.
has four Ghoul trackers. His shield, he has another Royal Flaymaster, Beast Flayer Baron, and two Ghoul trackers. So again, he's actually, I think this is Dan the most models. This is 12
Oh,
in the
okay.
tournament.
Nice.
Yeah. So yep. So we had a couple of 11s, as you pointed out, and this is 12. And look, I mean, that's a lot of models to deal
Yep.
with, and the ghoul trackers, like um, they're not like skeletons that'll just kind of fall away
They are.
super
They've
quick.
got only 8 wounds, toughness
Oh,
3.
okay, okay.
They don't have Baffling Parlay, which Flesh Eater Court schools have, which
Mm.
is Baffling Parlay is the reaction that lets a ghoul give you -1 attack when you attack it, which
Oh,
makes
right,
ghouls so much harder to kill than it looks like they are off of that T3 8 wounds. Um, but 12 models is so many models, and I appreciate the effort here from Kyle. Kyle went and got a second. This isn't just one box, right? He's gone and
hmm
gotten a second Flaymaster, which I think is a really nice way to give you some extra hitting power while staying on theme. Um, so I think that's great. I we've never seen Kyle is literally the first person to my knowledge to take Royal Beast Flayers to a tournament,
right, right.
which is really cool. So no idea how he's going to do. I do think 12 models, he will win a few of these objective missions just kind of automatically, right?
Right.
Just because he'll probably face at least one opponent who just can't clear 12 fighters off the board. Um,
Yep.
so yeah, gonna be an interesting test for some folks.
Absolutely. And our last list of the night goes to Ronald Bowling, who is our Soul Blight Gravelords player. In his dagger, he has King Morlach Velmorn, Sir Jedran Falseborn, Marshal Falk Velmorn. In his hammer, he has the Sepulchral Warden, Skeleton with Ancient Spear, Thane fourth and last. And in the shield, he has the Astragan Exemplar, Gorath the Enforcer, and Helmwar the Hewer. So really leaning into the Underworld's models here,
Yep.
right? And we talked about how I think we talked about how Velmorn is a pretty good underband. Um, in
Yes,
terms
they're
of
quite
their
good.
stats,
Mhm.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
so then he's supplementing it also with the Sepulchral Warden. And the only true like Soul Blight like straight Soul Blight model he has is one skeleton with an
Yeah.
ancient spear, right? So it's kind of funny, kind of
Yeah.
funny. So yeah, it'll be
This is
interesting.
cool because he's brought a whole warband of really characterful, really beautiful models, except for
hmm
that skeleton. Um, and he's only got one fighter who I would say is like not a really competitively sort of priced and statted fighter, which is Gorath the Enforcer, who I don't think
hmm
is very good, but like I don't mean that as an insult to Ronald. I mean that as like a real compliment here, where he's found this incredibly characterful list where
hmm
like 8 out of the 9 fighters are like dead competitive, really scary to face, which I think is really, really cool. And Askergen exemplars as allies in other factions, I think are really powerful and something that people, are starting to explore. And I think that's cool. So I like that.
Yeah, I think I can't wait to see the visual of this. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
this is going to be a
Yeah.
true like war band. Like you're going to see skeletons, you're going to see a vampire, you're going to see yeah, I mean skeletons and a vampire is essentially what you got with all of these. And so,
Another
you
big
know,
threat
and
to go best overall, right? Because
yeah,
if he manages to get to 4 wins, how depending on how these are painted, like, you could get it, yeah.
absolutely. So, I'm excited to see how it does, and being able to res a lot of these guys is going to come in handy with many of the missions that he has, right? So, um,
And King Morlack is the one guy who doesn't have he only has half of the resurrection nerf from the last FAQ. So he
mm,
gets to resurrect his sons at full health, which you normally can't do with Graveguard,
ah,
which
yep,
is really cool and really good.
yep,
Yeah.
because they don't count as minions, right?
Right, right, right.
Yep, yep.
Mhm.
Or no, they don't count as elites. I think they're minions,
They
and
do,
you get
yeah,
a
they are minions and they don't count as elites, I think
right.
is it. Yeah.
Yeah. So very good, very good. Well, that is the list. That's what we have. And do you have any kind of parting thoughts about what we see coming up?
I think it's so cool. I mean, like we talked about at the top of the show, so many people put real effort and real
Yeah.
thought into bringing like innovative, weird stuff. I just think it's so awesome that like a year into second edition and people are still iterating, people are still coming up with cool new things to
Mhm.
try. I think that's amazing, and I love the energy from everybody that's at this tournament, and I would have liked to see somebody bring the Chimera. You can see it's, right there where my
Yeah, yeah.
finger is, my Chimera there, but, I wish somebody had brought one, but that's okay that no one did.
My thoughts about the list as we went over them is that people are planning to come to play. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
they're coming to play, and I am not casting any shade on the tournament at Adepticon, but I feel like a lot of people feel like that's more narrative as well because it's sort of being run by the well, it's not sort of being run; it is being run by the Dogs of Warcry guys, right? And they're very known for
It's
their
not.
narrative play. Was that?
It's not run by them.
Oh, I
They have
thought
a
I thought.
separate narrative event. No, it's not run by them. I would
Oh, I
actually
thought they also
say
ran it.
no, they don't. I would say that Uh, the Adepticon tournament had more lists. It had more net lists in it, like
Mm,
more lists that are like, you know, like it had Graveguard spam. It
yeah.
had like two different Nurgle lists. We didn't see any Nurgle here, but
Hmm.
I still agree with you that people really came to play at this tournament and that like a lot of
Hmm.
thought was put into lists. I think
Yeah.
people generally leaned towards lower tier warbands, but put a
Hmm.
ton of work into those lower tier warbands as
Yeah.
opposed to, Adepticon, you saw more of the higher tier stuff, but um, maybe not quite as much innovation. Although
Hmm.
it was so much earlier in the season, I guess it's probably just as much innovation for the time, but
Sure.
now you're seeing like extra layers and extra all kinds of new technology being brought to the table, and I really love that.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is to see how this tournament has the Nova Open has iterated from last year when 2.0 just dropped, right?
Yeah,
And to see the list that we had then, where people were, I mean, literally trying to figure out what was working, what wasn't working,
yeah.
in the moment.
Mhm.
And to now come to this list where we've got 2.0 and we've had it for a year, and people are now very comfortable in it, and they're coming up with some very competitive lists. So I'm
Yeah,
very excited about that.
yeah,
Um, just yeah, yeah, we will talk about some of the reveals from the Nova Open next week. Um,
absolutely.
which will be awesome because our show will finally be like in a position to talk about the things when they come out, not afterwards, right? And so
Mhm.
and we'll talk about the results and go through it, so we'll have a good handle on the list that we have and be able to really kind of walk through the results and things like that. So I'm very excited about it. I will have a spreadsheet. Let me see if I can show all of you real quick. I'm not running this on Best Coast pairings because I talked to the Best Coast pairings guy and told him how I wanted to run this tournament. And he said, "Yeah, probably not best for Best Coast pairings,"
Mm.
and basically just kind of spurned me. Now, I'm gonna express a little bit of frustration. I have sent over to BCP the full list of all of the factions like 8 times, and they keep ignoring me. And I used to play AOS like with the BS Coast Pairings owner regularly, and I
Yeah.
think he's just very much focused on other things right now and not Warcry. And it's a little frustrating because I'm like, dude, I'm trying to help you help us, So, um, but I want to show this spreadsheet that I'll be managing the tournament off of. So we've got battle groups here. I've got names in some of the battle groups. This is going to change because we have some people who have dropped out, and we'll have to rearrange a little bit. But it'll track your wins, losses, your draws, your battle points that you get from the first 3 rounds, right? So we've got round 1, round 2, round 3, where players, will keep track of all of this, and then we've got kind of our elimination round brackets that will put that in. That'll be informed by these first 3 rounds, right? So I will have this. My goal is to send this out as a link for anybody to look at. It's viewable for anybody during the tournament. So Dan, I know you're not able to make it because you've got a new little spawn that you have to take care of, and
Yep.
um, but you will be able to follow along the tournament by using the link, and just keep track and see what everybody's doing, see what the win losses are, see what the battle points are, and just follow along at home. So all of our listeners can do that if they couldn't make it, unfortunately, to our tournament. So we're very excited about it.
Yeah, and I hope everybody watching on YouTube likes, comments, subscribes, and specifically in your comment, if you could talk about which of these open tabs Justin should be most embarrassed about. Let us know in the
Oh,
comments.
listen,
And
I have no shame. I have no shame in my tab management.
Um, yeah, I'm not meaning to razz you on any of them. Yeah, I'm very excited to see what goes down in this tournament. I do hope you maybe send the results to James' workshop via maybe the Warcry FAQ email or maybe the events email because man, like I know that they only see results from tournaments that are on BCP, so it would be a
Yeah,
shame if they missed out on like seeing all this incredible data that you're going to get. But I
right.
can't wait to put it into my stats, right? I mean, we've got so many players playing 5 rounds instead of 4, which is so much more data to get from the tournament.
Yeah.
I'm so excited about what we're going to see here, and can't wait to analyze all the results with you.
And I'm hoping that this tournament format works well. I mean, it's going to be a great tournament regardless, but I hope that people walk away saying like I like that as much. If it's as much as just regular Swiss pairings, like
Hmm.
or I liked it better. Like I'm hoping that we can walk away with some data on how this tournament setup works, because
Yeah.
I think the elimination rounds is really kind of critical to getting good data. Like I hate the fact that like Justin Orton, I think, was in the championship game and he ended up at third or fourth. I think
Mm,
was he
but
in third?
I don't know, I think Swiss is really good because, like, I would also hate the fact that Peter didn't get to be in the championship round despite having had just as great a tournament as me and Justin
Mhm.
at that point.
Sure.
Like, because Swiss can just be so unforgiving at that point. But you've also dealt with that in that you've got this like final bracket at the
That's
end,
right.
right? So
Yep.
you're addressing both of those concerns, I guess. So that's good. That's good
Yeah.
to see.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I'm hoping is that by having like a 4-person championship bracket for the last 2 rounds, that like your top 4 get to play against each other, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
um,
Mhm.
and kind of a semifinal final, and I think, and then it'll rack you stack you like in terms of 1, 2, 3, 4, right? We'll really get down to like who the top 4 are, and in fact, for the rest of the tournament, because the way our elimination rounds are set up, we'll have the end result of everybody top to bottom in their right
Yeah,
places, basically,
yeah.
instead of like, oh, I won my last round and it boosted me up like 20 spots, kind of
Well,
thing.
Swiss is pretty
So,
good at doing that too once you get to that fifth round,
yeah.
but I am excited to see how people like this bracket. I think it'll be cool. I think it'll be cool to see what I really hope is if people get like really fired up about their battle group going into battle against other battle groups, right?
Yeah.
Because you're essentially running 4 3-round tournaments,
Yep.
um, and then everyone from those tournaments fights all the people from the other tournaments,
That's right.
and I just really want people to be rooting for their battle group mates in day 2 against the other battle groups. I hope that there's, like, lots of cheering there, but who knows how people will take it, but I hope that people have fun with that.
Yeah, I do too. It'll be really interesting to see how it shakes out. So, anyway, Dan, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. Like, it was so much fun reviewing these
I had a
lists.
ton of
Like,
fun, yeah. So
yeah,
much
it's
so
it's
glad
so
I got to
great.
do it.
So, yeah,
Yeah,
thank you so much, and I can't wait to have you on next week. When we'll talk about all the results. So, thank you everybody to
absolutely.
listening. Hopefully, we see most of you at the tables next this Thursday in 2 days.
Yep.
But
And there's
if
open
not,
spots, and now you can
there
show
is.
up late, and you've already seen all the lists, and they haven't seen your list, and, if anybody goes into the tournament and wins that way, we have to give them a lot of shit, but we also have to call them a legend because that would be really funny.
I was thinking about that, right? Like, what if there are some people who still haven't submitted lists, and like they may see this show and then like submit a list. I don't know that there's like you can't plan for any one list though. The problem is there's so many threats in this that are like coming. I don't know. I guess a Chimera, bring a
There's
Chimera.
no
You
chimeras,
know,
and there's only 3 lists in the whole tournament that are capable of fighting a chimera.
yeah, yeah. So there you
So,
go.
that's what I
That's
would
what you
do.
should bring. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. All right,
Yep.
Dan. Thank you so much. Everybody else, you have a good night, and we will let you know what happens shortly. So, thank
Yep.
you, everybody.
Thanks.